Attention pro athletes. Want to secure your financial legacy and thrive off the field? Oakbridge Wealth Management, led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, is your dedicated financial planning ally. But don't take it from me. Take it from the Dallas Cowboys' Tyler Biadasz. He says, Chris set goals financially and has been incredibly impactful in my journey in the NFL. Experience our customized, comprehensive approach, trusted by top NFL players. Don't leave your financial success to chance. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakbridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakbridgeWM_ANICETE, and let Oakbridge Wealth Management guide you across the goal line.
First sheet again, big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Vermont's a man, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the
Welcome back to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag and Oakbridge Wealth Management. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
Again, man, every day on the podcast is a holiday. Excited to chop it up today, but you know what? We're not even a month out. Like football, it's here, man. It's exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting, and I'm very excited about our guest today. We have Joshua Perry, who will be calling some Badger games this fall on NBC, I believe. Joshua, Big Ten Network. It is great to see you and great to have you here.
No, definitely appreciate the invite. Excited to talk a little football. I'm getting super excited too. Like, you know, your blood starts to do some different things. Your heart rate elevates when you start getting close to football season. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Are you getting any flashbacks to training camp?
Yeah, actually. And I've gone to a couple of training camp practices this preseason. I'm watching those guys run around. And I'm like, dude, I don't have it in me anymore. So get the flashbacks, mostly good things nowadays. So.
Yeah, I'm sure about it. Yeah, we talked about Bernie going to camp last week on the podcast because Wisconsin, I don't know if Ohio State, when you were there, you guys like went away to camp or not, but we used to go away to, Bernie used to go away to the seminary in outside of Madison and really just be shut off from the entire world. Did you guys have that at Ohio State as well?
No, so we never really went away. What Urban would do a lot of times is he would take us to these like public practice fields, and they were absolutely terrible. Like, you know, there's like concrete in the middle of the field just to build up a little grittiness. Because when we went back to the facility, it was like being at a country club. So, you know, no travel, no dorms necessarily, but he used to make us get out there in the mud a little bit.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Well, before we get into it here with Joshua, I want to remind you that we are presented by betonline.ag, where they continue to be your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over there at BetOnline, especially as football season is closing in. It is the place to be for futures, Heisman Trophy odds, all that good stuff. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts. And we are going to start today, Joshua, talking about the most important man in Wisconsin at the moment, and that is Coach Luke Fickell, someone with whom you are intimately familiar. So talk to us first just about your relationship with Coach Fickell.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the all-time guys in this business. I know there are a lot of coaches out there who get in it to just coach, and they want to do the X's and O's in the program building, but they don't necessarily want to do the relationship part of it. And Luke Fickell is fully invested on the relationships, and mine dates back to when I was a high school sophomore. Is when I first got to know him. He is a phenomenal human being, a better person than he is a football coach, and he's a great football coach. But he's somebody who will just send a text to check up on me, ask how my family's doing, things of that nature. And he's built that type of connection with a lot of different players. I look at his coaching staff and the amount of guys that he's worked with in the past that are now at Wisconsin. You got Dante Booker, who's working with strength and conditioning, and Chris Worley, who's working player development, and Tuff Borland, who's a GA there. Strength coach Brady Collins is a guy who I'm very familiar with too. He was at Ohio State when I was there, but we also went to the same high school. He was a few years ahead of me, but those guys developed a really tight connection, and they've been together ever since. I think that shows the type of person that he is and how much he really values relationships. And so For me, it's been great to watch his career take off like this because he's the guy who deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had Brady Collins on the show twice already, and we are also very big fans of Brady Collins. He is someone who has a unique energy. And now you got to come up and spend some time with the team this summer, with the Badgers, actually. Talk to us about how that happened. Why did Coach Fick bring you in?
Yeah, so he's doing a series. We called it Real Life Wednesday when I was at Ohio State. I don't know if he's calling it something different at Wisconsin, but it was truly about developing more than just players and athletes. We want to develop the holistic person, and part of that is reaching out to the community, developing real life skills for when you're done playing. Now, in this day and age, it's also about branding and NIL and how to really leverage who you are as an athlete in a place like Wisconsin, which has a rabid fan base and is one of the more notable programs in the country. And so Chris Worley reached out to me and he asked if I would come in and talk about what I do professionally, but also the opportunities that their athletes have there at Wisconsin in terms of name, image, and likeness. And I was all over it. And it was really good. We spent a lot of time talking about branding. We spent a lot of time talking about how media can help build your brand. We talked about social media and, just being able to present yourself authentically and in a way that resonates with people. And then ultimately, you can attract brands that align with your values and make money, but also make money in a way that you're believing. And it was really good. The guys there were super receptive. It's an impressive group of young men there. And I was definitely glad to do it. One of my big takeaways from the NIL program there at Wisconsin is that they're trying to incentivize their athletes to save their money. And I'm big on this thing with young people where everybody's like, we need to try to keep up with the Joneses, all the guys like wearing the nice suits and they want the cars and they want the, Louis Vuitton for when they're walking into the stadium and all that. You got other guys who are more entrepreneurial and they want to invest their money and they want to find a way to make their money grow. And I believe, and they believe that when you're a young person, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself and into your future. And so Coach Fickell's trying to find creative ways to incentivize those guys to make sure that they hold on to as much money as they possibly can, which I think is a great idea. Ultimately, it's a unique spot going in and talking to a group of college kids, specifically collegiate athletes, on branding and how to make money, because it's something I wasn't able to do when I was playing. But they want to bring in folks who have that real life experience that can really pour into the locker room community there.
Yeah. What were some of the questions that the guys had for you when you were out there presenting?
Well, I had guys ask me about how to get into media and what it's like being a media personality, because it's a natural transition for a lot of players. I know things that guys like to do when they're done playing. They want to get into media, they want to get into coaching, and they want to get into sales. They want to eat what they kill. And I've done two of those three things in my life, so I can share those experiences with them. That was really good. The other thing was just, from a branding standpoint, I talked a lot about authenticity, and guys want to know what that really looked like. And we had some examples, and I used Giannis, the Greek freak, and guys up there are familiar with him. But he was a guy coming over to the States. He talked about how much he loved drinking smoothies. I think that really endeared him to the community. Also, if I'm, Smoothie King or whoever, might throw him a little bit of money and have him drinking my smoothies as he's walking into the arena. Different things like that. And so it's nothing too big. Like recently, I was on one of the shows I do, and I talked about how I used to love eating goldfish before games, and Goldfish sent me a care package. And it's just like, does care package pay the bills? No. Did I build a genuine relationship with the brand? Yes. Did I get goldfish, which I love? Absolutely. And it's even things like that. And I think it shows a more real side. Like everybody sees you as a football player, you got a freaking cage around your face, and they don't know what your personality is like. And so as often as it is appropriate to just share a little bit about yourself, I think that is what really moves the needle when it comes to personal branding.
Josh, I'm sorry, my internet has been wonky, so I switched to the phone, but do you suggest that, because now you can make money, so would you have called Goldfish? Like, is that something that these kids should be doing, is calling the places they love and saying, hey, can I get a deal here? Are you interested in working with me? Is that something like that you would suggest to do?
I don't see why they shouldn't do it. I think, especially now, with social media, like you could hit up their social media team, or you can go on Instagram, Twitter, whatever the case is, and reach out to somebody and get the ball rolling there. Definitely easy to reach out. I know that some players have representation. That'd be something, if I had an agent, I'd be like, hey, and I do it personally right now. I'd be like, hey, can you kick the tires on this and see what's up? Because I think part of this is having to go out and do the work. And I think a lot of people thought when this NIL thing came around, it was just going to be easy money and everybody was going to be approaching them. And quite frankly, like you have to introduce yourself to a lot of people. And it again goes back to the nature of playing football, but it's a big roster and they don't get to see your face. I think for as many of these athletes as possible, getting face to face with people is huge. Like, oh man, they realize you have a great smile and a good personality and that you can articulate what the values of their brand are and your brand. And how that goes along together. So to answer your question, yes, I think there are a lot of players that probably fly a little bit more under the radar that have to put that groundwork in. And it's a balance too, because you gotta do schoolwork, you gotta get in your playbook, so you can't spend all day cold calling companies. But if there's something that you feel really passionate about representing and being a part of, those guys absolutely should do it.
I think the mentality of football, at least, and you probably know this better, but for a college athlete, you are a business now. You are a brand. Like when I showed up on campus in '01, I was nothing. I wasn't a brand. I wasn't marketable. I was like just this dude from New York who showed up. Now, what's the mindset, Joshua, of like a literal company? Like you become a company the second you sign to get a scholarship to the University of anywhere. What's that mindset like now?
Yeah, I think it's a tough mindset for a young person because there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it. I would say the first thing, if I were doing it, and hopefully I had a great team, but protect myself one way or another, right? So you have to protect the way that you're presented, and you have to protect your best interests and things that go along with that. I also think you have to keep first things first. Bad players aren't getting deals. It's like pretty simple. So you got to go out there and ball. Like you can't just walk on campus and expect just because you're on scholarship and you got the sweatsuit that all of a sudden the money's supposed to be rolling in. Like you have to put in the work. You have to become a player that people resonate with, they've seen on the field, and somebody that folks ultimately like. So I think the process has changed just from the way that young athletes have to think about themselves and how much more they have to keep their guard up. And like I was in the age of Instagram and Twitter, so we had branding opportunities we couldn't monetize. And the flip side of that too was like everybody had a camera phone in their pocket, so we had to really be aware of what we were doing. And now I think it's even a step further with the ability to make money, how you have to protect yourself there. But it still goes back to the old school though, and I think that a lot of the old school values still remain. Are you a good person? Are you a good player? And ultimately, if those two things happen, you're going to be able to do whatever you want to do.
What is your favorite NIL story that you have seen of someone using their brand for in a unique way for, promoting good? Like what are some of, or at least your favorite NIL stories that you've encountered?
Yeah, I know a lot of the collectives that have come out have fashioned themselves into charitable organizations, and I know that the IRS is looking into that, and it's a funny proposition to think that you pay somebody to do charity work. But one guy who's actually really into the work and does it not because it's something that makes him a lot of money, but just because he's a person that actually cares about the community is Blake Corum at Michigan. I know I'm an Ohio State guy talking about a Michigan man, but to see the work that he's done in the community, Thanksgiving drives and back to school drives and camps, things of that nature that really build inroads and give folks who, everybody's watching on Saturday, but an opportunity to meet a great athlete and to feel like they're a part of that community, I think is a big deal. And it's one of the great things that not enough people are talking about, because you could talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. doing a national ad campaign with The Rock. And like, it's really good stuff. And you can talk about Angel Reese doing Sports Illustrated, and like, it's a really good opportunity. But the thing that has come out of this is some guy said, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to build a brand that is around people and supporting people. I think about one of my favorite athletes of all time, and LeBron James, and how he's used his platform to help educate people, send kids off to school, and to find housing and jobs for people in his community. But you got college kids that are thinking that same way. And, ultimately, they're going to become adults, and that's still going to be on their heart, and they're going to be able to change the trajectory of other people's lives and of families' lives out there, which I think is fun stuff. So you get the dark side and you see the kids pulling up to the facility and they've got Mercedes and BMWs and cars nicer than what we drive right now. And everybody thinks it's all about vanity and gluttony and what's in it for me. But there are a bunch of stories out there of guys who said, I'm going to take my free time and I'm going to take some of my earnings and I'm going to pour it back into the community, which is doing the right thing.
Dude, Josh, one of the guys who recently graduated, not recently, I'm sorry, when I was there, had the first G-Wagon ever to come off the line. I was like, dude, I've never seen this car in my life. I was driving this garbage scooter. Listen, I think what you're saying is really important. I think there's the NIL has a way. Also, you grew up during a time when you could use a platform. You have a platform, and you could use it the way you want to. And I don't know anything about Blake. He's a great athlete. I literally hate Michigan, probably not as much as you do, but maybe close. But it does make me feel good that there are dudes out there doing these things. And I think using social media is so important in that way. How do you think, like, is there a way to do it so people don't always, there's so many haters out there. Is there a way to do it that people are like, nah, he's just doing it to make himself look good? How do you get around some of that stuff?
Unfortunately, no. Like, I think people are just going to look for reasons to discount the good works that folks do, and it happens constantly. And it's like, for example, if you're somebody who says that you are a charitable person, but they see you pull up to the charity event in a luxury vehicle, right? Like, somebody's going to have a comment about that. And I think two things can exist at one time. Like, I think somebody can understand that it is the right thing to do to help the community. They're passionate about helping their community. They see the value in helping their community. And ultimately, it's something that they make a priority, while also saying that this brings me good publicity and it brings me goodwill and it helps me out personally. And I think those two things can exist. And I think they're both fine. I think that somebody can, live a life that they feel like is suitable. And it doesn't make them any less charitable when they show up to the event because they drive a nicer car than people think they should, or whatever the case is. So I feel like we have, as a society, made a decision that it's either one way or it's another way, but two things cannot exist at one time. And I am a big believer in the nuance of situations. And this even crosses over into football, where I feel like we have to evaluate certain teams or certain players or whatever the case is on different levels. Like, I think that Indiana, Rutgers, Northwestern could go out and they could get beat by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And I could also say that they played a pretty good game. But when you're playing against the Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, what people hope Wisconsin is going to look like this year, when you're playing those types of teams, sometimes you end up losing by 2 touchdowns, even though you played a solid game. Like, both things can happen at the same time. And so my biggest thing is I hope that people who are giving of themselves and spending time and making it a priority don't get discouraged by folks who want to point fingers while they're sitting on their behind not doing a daggone thing.
Listen, I do. I really like that. Just a straight up question. Do you like the NIL?
I don't love it as it is constructed. I think that the NIL inducements to high school athletes are borderline criminal. And I say that because you are asking somebody who has never seen, and regardless of what background you come from, has never seen that substantial amount of money that is their own personally to do whatever they want with. And you're asking them to make a decision about the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years in some cases of their life, and then the next 50 years after that, based off of a dollar amount. Young people are not equipped to make those decisions. And so for high schoolers to be told, if you come here, you will get this amount of money, probably not fully understand how that money is paid out or what they have to do in order to get it, I think is borderline criminal. I love the idea of leveraging brands. I love the idea of being able to go out there and say, I balled out. And so I have earned the opportunity to be somebody who could be the face of something bigger than them. I think it's great. I know people have kicked around the idea of a revenue share, and we all see what's going on in collegiate athletics right now, and we see what these TV deals are looking like. I work for a big TV network. I know what they put in my paycheck. I know what they put into the production budgets and everything. There's a lot of money out there. And so even the idea of a revenue share, I know it gets complicated. I'm here for that. The other part of NIL that I think is bothersome too is it goes back to the charitable collective thing. I think that is it's a way that folks have tried to take advantage of um, charitable contributions, basically tax code, to be able to funnel money to players. That feels a little bit dirty because I like to see the money being put into the legitimate charities that are doing the work. And there's a million of them out there that get the same benefit that don't actually do the work. And that's just a thing of mine. So essentially what I'm getting at is they need guardrails. I don't think they need to take more freedom away from student athletes. I just think it needs to be guided in a way that we are not hurting student athletes and we are not trying to take advantage of the system.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Attention athletes. Do you want a frictionless and tailored financial planning experience to secure your future? Well, look no further. Introducing Oak Bridge Wealth Management, the premier financial planning firm for professional athletes. Led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, our team provides a unique and comprehensive approach, ensuring your financial success both on and off the field. We understand the unique challenges you face as a professional athlete, from managing cash flow habits to planning major business purchases and navigating complex contracts. That's why we've developed a proven process, working closely with our strategic partners to provide seamless solutions for your unique financial journey. Our services evolve with your career, offering short, mid, and long-term goal setting, portfolio optimization, real estate investments, and more. As you transition to life beyond the field, we support you with career development and philanthropic ventures. But don't just take our word for it. Top NFL players like Chase Roulier, Tyler Biadasz, Alec Ingold, and more trust Oak Bridge Wealth Management to guide them towards financial success. Troy Dye of the Minnesota Vikings says, I really love the work that Chris and the rest of the Oak Bridge group do. I especially like the honesty and transparency when it comes to setting up financial goals and plans that best fit my needs and situation. It's time to elevate your financial game plan. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakBridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakBridgeWM_ANICETE. And join the winning team. Yeah, absolutely. And so that actually makes for a nice transition a little bit into talking about the media, because we see a lot of critiques out of the media about NIL from people who think it's absolutely horrendous and college students shouldn't get anything and should be happy with a scholarship. And people say, just let it be a free for all, let it be a complete, the wild, wild west out there. I wanted to talk to you today, though, a little bit about your career in media, because, you've done a great job, obviously, transitioning from being a player to being part of the media. And so, first of all, when did you get interested in being on the media side of athletics and specifically college football?
I fell into it, if I'm being completely honest. So I graduated from Ohio State after the 2015 season. I was drafted in the fourth round in 2016 to the Chargers. I spent a year there. Coaching staff got canned. I got cut at the end of the preseason, went over to Indianapolis. I played there for a year. Coaching staff got canned. I got cut after that year. I went over to Seattle. I was dealing with injuries. I just decided that I needed to make a transition in my life. So when I went back home to Columbus, Ohio, and that's where I grew up, I got a real estate license. I went right to real estate school, and that's the sales part that I was talking about. And I had developed a solid real estate career. I had an office eventually that I was running and was closing deals, whatever the case was. But the whole time I was doing that, I started to get into media. So I had somebody reach out when I first left the league and said, we want you to do pregame coverage of Ohio State on the radio. And I was like, that's fantastic. I'll do it. Never done it before, but I'll figure it out. Then I had somebody reach out and say, we want you to do post-game coverage for Ohio State on a local station. I was like, great, never been on TV. I'll figure it out. And just kind of from there, I started getting more and more opportunities to do it. And then it became something I figured out that I really enjoy. And I tell people all the time, I don't feel like I'm going to work when I go to work, which is a great place to be. The other part of it is something that I figured out that I could be really good at and I was passionate about. And so when those two things kind of came together for me mentally, I decided that it was something that I wanted to fully invest in. I've also been extremely fortunate to be a guy who was just in the right place at the right time. Like when I left the league, it was the right place, right time to get started up. A year after that, Big Ten Network had an opening, and it was the right place and right time for me to audition for that job. And then, over the last year with realignment and new TV deals, NBC getting into the picture ended up being a great opportunity for me to still cover Big Ten football, but to do it on a national stage with NBC. And so I can't hardly say that all of it is because, I'm a grinder and I work hard and I'm really good at what I do. Like part of it is I just happen to have the opportunity fall into my lap at the right timing for me to be able to make moves. So I've been fortunate in a lot of ways, but to go back to it, like this is something I love, and I could not imagine my life right now without being part of the media.
A lot of people say the hard work ethic that I'm sure you've had your entire life got you into these positions to be lucky, though.
It's 100% the case. Like, I mean, you all know how it is. Like, putting together a show is difficult and it's time consuming, and there are a lot of elements to it. And you have to be, you have to be well studied, and you have to be on point, and you have to present. And so there's definitely work that goes into that. And I tell some of my friends who think they want to get into media, and I'm like, that's great, but it's not just the couple hours that you see on a Saturday. This is an all week thing. I watch as much tape or even more tape sometimes than I did when I was a player, just trying to get an edge for when I'm doing game breakdowns and things of that nature. During the college football season, I work 6 days a week. So it's definitely a grind and a hustle. But at the same time, like, the opportunity needs to be there. Like, I know a lot of really talented people who just haven't caught the breaks that they need in order to get their foot in the door. And I've been fortunate enough to catch some of those breaks. So it's a combination, no doubt. And I think that the background as an athlete has forced me to work differently because I'm uncompromising in my ethic. But at the same time, like, if there's nowhere to go, then I'm over here as a talented dude who's just sitting around and I don't have a microphone to talk into.
So, what's been the best piece of advice you've received in this media journey that you've been on now for a couple of years?
I think the idea that don't forget where you came from as a player. And what I mean by that is when I was at Big Ten Network, that's a company that only covers Big Ten sports, and they cover it as closely as anybody does. And so with that, you get everybody's mom and dad watching, and their grandparents are watching, and all of their high school friends are watching, and it becomes an opportunity to really celebrate these athletes, and many of them who probably won't hear their name on ESPN, many of them who won't ever play the game again after they're done, really lean into the idea of knowing what it was like to be a former player. And your mom DVRs the part where they were reading the highlight and they said your name in it. I think that was really big. The other part about it too, and this was not a difficult process, but I feel like folks really like to lean into where you played and they want to micro analyze your analysis. But just making sure that you're thoughtful when it comes to remaining objective and having a fair and balanced viewpoint. I think the pitfall that I fall into is not hyping Ohio State up. I feel like I'm as hard on them in media as anybody else is because I know what we were when I played there, and that was a championship team. And I know what type of talent they have and the expectation level. And so sometimes I might be a little bit more critical than other people are, but just that idea of, there's folks from every fan base watching, and all they want to feel like is that their team is being treated fairly when people are talking about them.
I find that I love to know where people played and that they did play. I find that to me is exciting when you're hearing commentation. But I also think it does the best people are the ones that are exactly what you're saying, aren't are hard on every team or are picking things out of everywhere and not
favoriting a team. To me, that would be impossible. I'm just in awe of how you do it because I don't know how to do it. Like everything Wisconsin does to me is great. And even if they lose, I'm like, that's not their fault. It's somebody else's fault. But I think that is what makes the best commentators are the people who can do that. You can tell me differently, but I really think that's special.
No, I mean, I think it is too. And it's just, I think it's big on perspective and why people tune in. Like, and at the end of the day, I think that what I do specifically is more of a celebration than anything else of collegiate athletics and of programs and players and coaches and different unique journeys to get to wherever the destination is for people. And I like to keep that top of mind. Like, if I want somebody to feel like they're getting the real analysis, and I'm not going to fluff it up and say anything that's untrue just to make people feel good. But ultimately, you want them to feel good about the analysis because they know it's genuine and it's accurate, and it's coming from a place of, this is what we saw and this is what it means, and for your fan base, this is what you should expect moving forward, and people can ultimately feel good walking away from that.
So I want to pivot here to talk about Luke Fickell because we are in a Badger podcast. You said you've known him since you were a sophomore in high school. So what has been your relationship with Coach Fick, and how has it evolved from being a recruit to now being in the media and someone he's clearly still values the opinion of greatly enough to bring you into the program and talk?
Well, as a high school recruit, there was a lot of ass kissing that didn't go on when I got on campus, and so that was a little bit of a shift there. I had to learn who the real Coach Fickell was once I got on campus. But I tell people this, and I mean it genuinely. But if Luke Fickell was not the linebacker coach and defensive coordinator at Ohio State, I'm not exactly sure that I would have finished my career at Ohio State, because Urban, and I love him to death, and we've got a great relationship to this day too. We didn't start off like that. He didn't recruit me. I got recruited by Jim Tressel's staff, and Urban told me straight up, like, you're not the type of player that I typically would recruit, and I don't know if you're going to make it here. And that was demoralizing because I had never heard anybody tell me that I wasn't a good athlete before. And so Coach Fickell always used to come in the meeting room after we get done with team meetings, and he'd shut the door, and he would just remind us that everything you heard in there isn't necessarily reality. And what we do in our room is the reality. And he would shoot it with us straight. And that would be from days where Urban was hyping everything up, and he'd be like, that's not reality. We got to take it back a step. Or it'd be days when Urban was really hard on us, and he would say, that's not reality. This is what you really are. That perspective was really big for me. And so I've always appreciated that. And I think that has changed my approach to kind of staying in neutral on a lot of things and trying to figure out and diagnose what the reality actually is. When I became a former player, we stayed in touch constantly. And I tried not to blow him up, and he wouldn't blow me up, but just the idea of being able to maintain that relationship, I think, was important for the both of us. But my going into my second year in the NFL, Coach Fickell had asked me about an opportunity at Cincinnati and if I was interested in it. And that's the type of guy that he is. And I mentioned the amount of former players that are working with him, but he was always just looking out, like just making sure that everything was taken care of. And if he could help in any type of way, that he was going to be that type of person. And I still feel that to this day. And when I was on campus to talk about NIL, I got to spend a lot of time with him, which I was fortunate to do. And when we chat, it's, some of it's about football, and, we're just talking about the game. Most of it is about everything else that's going on in his family and his 6 children and his wonderful wife. And he's asking me about my wife and if we're planning on having a family, whatever the case is, professionally, how things are going. Like, it's never just a football conversation, but it's never been just a football conversation with me and him. And I think it's important. And I mentioned it off the top, but like, there's so many guys in the industry that don't care about anything but the game. And it's really hard to exist in a world where you're hyper focused on that one thing, and you have to try to act like nothing else matters. And everything else matters sometimes. And he would always be the right guy to talk to when there was something else that was going on. And he still is.
Joshua, do you think the success he's having now is from like just all the coaching experience he gathered in all these different places? And what do you think that is? Because he'll say it, he said it a number of times. He's like, we haven't even played a snap of football. and everyone is hyping him up. What's that hype to you, and how does a guy like Coach Fickell handle that?
The hype is because of what he's done his whole career. As a position coach, he was really good. As a coordinator, he was fantastic. As a head coach at Cincinnati, obviously, he did something that nobody else had done, and it's take a group of 5 team to the college football playoff. He put a ton of guys in the NFL, and that's not because he had the best rosters. And when I was playing at Ohio State, we had better players than everybody else. Is why he had so many guys go to the league. He had to develop those guys. He had to make them into players, and he's done that in multiple spots. We had one of our guys the year I got drafted, another one of our linebackers, Darren Lees from New Albany, Ohio. He played quarterback in high school. Luke Fickell pounded the table to get him in the door. Urban didn't want him. He got him in, developed this 3-star guy who was a quarterback into an All-American linebacker who was a first-round pick. It's something he's done throughout his career. And so I think a lot of people are looking at the past experience to predict what's going to happen in the future. I also think that people are looking at the Wisconsin program, and they're seeing the infrastructure that's there. They're seeing the financial commitment that came with bringing Coach Fickell in, not only for him, but for his staff, for facilities, which I think is really important at showing that they're trying to compete in the new age of college football. And so I think that there's a stat that's out there that Wisconsin as a program had the most wins of any team that had not made it to the college football playoff. Like, I think people see that, and they see the type of place that it is, and they feel extremely confident in it. I know that Coach Fick had job offers when he was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State before he left for Cincinnati. And he turned them all down because he's a very patient person who has the ability to look at himself and to say if he's ready for an opportunity. Like, a lot of guys jump at it because they're like, oh, yeah, this is the next step. And he's like, well, don't know if it's the right step for me. Don't know if it's the right step for my family. And quite frankly, don't know if I'm ready. And I think his ability to do that for a long time has really impacted how he approaches building his own programs and how he approaches building a staff and how he approaches working with his players. And so he's the right type of guy to be in college football. And I think that he went to a great program. One of the questions that a lot of people asked was, why Wisconsin? Like, of all the different places, people were thinking that he could have become the head coach at Ohio State one day. I know when Notre Dame, when Brian Kelly left, his name was thrown around in there. And I know there was a lot of legitimate interest, and it's a place that I'm certain he would have enjoyed and had success at. People say, why Wisconsin? And I think it's for a number of reasons. It's in the Midwest, which he loves. It's a gritty place, which he loves. And again, what this athletic department is showing that they want to become and what they have been as a program, exceeding expectations a lot of times, he was all for it. And so I think it's a perfect marriage.
So what is something that Badger fans should know about Coach Fick that they probably don't know, that they probably haven't known, that hasn't come out in his different interviews?
Man, that's a toughie. I don't know. The personality, I think, is the biggest part of it. And he portrays to be this like super serious guy. And he is very serious when it comes down to it. But there were multiple times where he would invite the linebackers over the summer to his house, and he'd be throwing guys in the pool, and he'd try to like dunk on us on the basketball hoop. I'm like, Coach, you can't even get up like that. Like, you can't jump. Just like different things like that. He's a guy who embraces the fun parts of being a coach, and somebody who he has hard standards, and he's going to grind guys, but at the same time, like, he's going to make sure that everybody has fun. And he's going to get down and dirty and do the work too. Like, it used to be funny because we would do early morning workouts. We'd come in and we see Coach Fickell getting a workout in before the team got there. And then the coaches are all in the field yelling at us during the off season. And he would see a guy struggling, a young guy, and he would get in there with him. Right. Like, it's the stuff that most coaches, like, you've seen what some of these coaches look like. They're not willing to do it. And Luke Fickell is like, no, I'm one of the guys. We're going to do this together.
I have like so many questions off of my head, but so I want to talk about the landscape of football, because I think it's shifting dramatically. And you're a Big Ten guy. The Big Ten is going to have 40 teams in it at some point.
Yeah, right.
What's your thought on like these super conferences? Because it looks like we're going that way. This is like a multi-layered question. What's your thought about the conferences? And some Pac-12 is going to be nothing soon. Maybe
Yeah.
it's nuts. What's your thought on our athletic director McIntosh seeing maybe some of these things happening and really trying to get ahead of it? I mean, hiring Fickell was not the most popular hire at the time,
Right.
and now it seems like a very successful, a great hire. What are your thoughts on all those things? Because I think Wisconsin has put itself in a position to be on top, at least winning when all these things start changing.
No, it's a great question. I'll start with the Wisconsin aspect of it. Is you have to be on the offensive in this day and age, and I think you have to be outside of the box and maybe take some chances that people don't understand at the time. But when you can see what's on the horizon, you understand it. Not everybody can see that, and so I think it was something that Wisconsin had to do in order to stay competitive. And I look at the Big 12 in that regard, and their new commissioner Brent Yormark, and what he decided that he was going to do is he said, "Screw it." We're not going to be the Big Ten. We're not going to be the SEC, but we're definitely not going to be left behind either. And so he went out and he got some group of 5 teams to go ahead and join the Big 12. People are kind of looking like, does that really move the needle? It's like, I don't know if it necessarily moves the needle, but it gets us into different geographies that still make sense, but also have rabid football fan bases. And then he goes after Colorado. And again, it's like, does going after Colorado really make sense? It was a team that was 1-11 last year. And it's like, well, Prime's moving the needle right now. And, they're in a geography that is growing, Denver in the state of Colorado, and they like football there. And so let's just bring them in. And that started the domino to where the Pac-12, they didn't do anything. And now all of a sudden it's going to be the Pac-4. Nobody exists anymore. You have to get aggressive, and it's almost finding ways to survive when you can't be one of the big dogs that's thriving. And I don't think that, Big 12 had that mentality that they were necessarily going to be the big dog, but they said, we're not going to go away. And so now the Big Ten, I feel like in this last round of realignment, specifically with Oregon and Washington, they had to make a decision because the opportunity fell into their lap. And I know it was unpopular among some administrators and some university presidents and decision makers. But at the same time, it's like, guys, we have this golden opportunity to bring in a couple of brands that are really competitive. People like football. Let's go. And so I give credit for that. I think the
Joshua,
biggest.
let me ask you one question on top of that. How many conferences do you think survive, and what's like a good amount to have where like football is still interesting to watch? I think to me, like 3 is not enough. 3 conferences aren't enough.
Yeah, I think the ACC still makes it, honestly. And the reason that I say that is because they got that stupid grant of rights through 2036 or whatever the case is. It feels like people are trying to find out if they can get out of it, but it's ironclad. And I think that a lot of the schools I'll just put it like this, from a TV perspective, I don't know how much money the TV networks are going to shell out if there is a new massive wave of realignment. For teams that would be moving from the ACC to the SEC, ESPN has the SEC. They already have the ACC. Why would they pay more for those same teams? That doesn't make sense from a business case standpoint. For the Big Ten, and we see what's happening with Oregon and Washington, they're coming in on a reduced revenue share. Well, it's because they just redid the deal. And I'm sure the TV networks are saying, like, dude, we gave you a ton of money. Like, you guys have to now find a way to make those work. And we got to do some more work on our end as TV networks now, because we got to move around inventory, and we probably have to get into different windows. We might be doing games throughout the week that we didn't plan on doing. It's like, could there be a Thursday night window? Could there be a Friday window? Do we have to open up the Pac-12 after dark window on these networks that haven't necessarily done it before? I think that for the ACC, they're kind of stuck, but it keeps them together, which I think is better than the alternative. The Big 12 looks like they're going to be around, and then you got the Big 10, the SEC. So I think it's going to be 4 conferences. And I'm not exactly sure what happens to the remainder of the Pac-12, and that'll be, we'll see what happens from there on out. 4 feels like an interesting number, though, with the new playoff format coming up, because, 4 teams are going to be able to get buys. Do you just say that the power 4 whoever their conference champ is, they get the bye. Do we do it a different way? I'm not exactly sure. But I think they stay. Now, my biggest sticking point on realignment is this. I think it's fun for us. I think we're going to get to see more marquee matchups throughout the season, which I think that fans are going to enjoy. And obviously, from a TV standpoint, that's going to move the needle and drive ratings. There's an idea that college football specifically is built off of history. And so part of the history of the game evaporates with these moves. And I know people are looking at Washington State, Oregon State, for example. Are you going to be able to maintain those rivalries, or are they rivalries that go away? I was on Wikipedia the other day looking at Big Ten rivalries because I was trying to figure out how many trophies there are in this conference, and it's about 1 million of them. What I failed to realize is Minnesota has like 5-6 rivals. They've got Wisconsin, they've got Iowa. What I didn't realize was that Michigan is a
Little
rival
brown
of
jug.
theirs. Yeah. I mean, like there are all these things that I don't think a lot of us have considered, and it makes it hard from a scheduling standpoint to maintain some of that history. And then probably the bigger point is I think having a West Coast hub with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA is important for Olympic sports and non-revenue sports, because the travel that is required of them, and many of them are busing or they're flying commercially, they don't get the charter like football does, becomes difficult. They're especially in season with their academic schedule, that's tough. And these are a lot of athletes who aren't making NIL money. And some of them are on partial scholarship, trying to figure out how they're going to pay the rest of their way through school. Some of them wanted to be close to home, so their mother and father could watch them. And now all of a sudden, the competitions aren't going to be anywhere remotely close to home. We have to ensure, if you are an administrator, if you are somebody high up in a university, that those athletes are taken care of. Because I think football is going to be taken care of. Basketball is going to be taken care of both on the men's and the women's side. Even in some of these athletic departments, Wisconsin, great volleyball program, I'm sure they'll take care of the volleyball players. Like Nebraska's going to take care of theirs. I know Ohio State's going to take care of theirs. But like baseball, how are we doing? What about gymnastics? We got synchronized swimming at Ohio State. Are you going to take care of them? Like, are we going to figure out ways to make sure that this is equitable for athletes across different sports? And I hope that there is a way to ensure that their lives are already going to be disrupted, but as minimally as possible.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we've unfortunately all got other meetings to go to. I have a million more questions for you, Joshua. So we're just going to have to bring you back. We didn't even get to really preview the Big Ten season.
This is great. So this is great because I've insured myself a second appearance. Yep. So this is really good stuff. I will be back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll definitely have to talk Ohio State, Wisconsin as well. Joshua, I think you were part of that, 70-0 beatdown or 70-7 beatdown in the Big Ten title game. That's one of the lowest points of Wisconsin football. So thanks for, just bringing those memories back here. You can catch Joshua on NBC and Big Ten Network this fall. We're really excited about that. We will link to his social medias in the show notes. We appreciate everyone here for tuning into the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag and our friends over at Oak Ridge Wealth Management. And until next time, on Wisconsin.